Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Zenington and welcome to today's video for Legends of Runeterra. Spoiler season is continuing. We've almost reached the date of release, by the way. Today, though, sadly, no champions have been spoiled, but instead we've gotten a lot of different cards from all regions. A lot of regions. I don't know if it's all regions in all honesty, but a lot of regions. Might be all regions. Whatever. Anyway, though, let's go and take a quick look at them because there's a lot of cards and we gotta take a look at them. Some of them good, some of them not so good. So, here we go. First up, the cutest card ever. Dragon CHOW. 1 mana 0/3. When you play a dragon, it strikes me and you draw 1. The poor Dragon CHOW. Living and existing just to die and be fodder for the dragon. How sad. Now the card itself, interesting. I like to say interesting when I don't know exactly how to evaluate it, but interesting card. The problem is this kind of card goes in dragon decks, obviously, and dragons kind of suck. They feel like a weird control mid-range deck that feels like a worse control deck and a worse mid-range deck. This does help out dragons a lot, though. One, it helps you cycle through your deck, sure. And if you want to be cute, you can always buff this and give it more health somehow so you can get multiple strikes on this thing. I don't think you should try to do that. There's also some cute things you can do with things like Lamb's Respite to make it so this card can't die. I don't think you should try to do that either. That's a little too cute. Most of the time, I feel like this card is going to get played early on, used as an emergency blocker if your opponent plays something that just needs to be blocked that turn, but is going to die when you play like something like a Shivana on turn 4. Sure, level 1 Shivana doesn't have Fury, but she is technically a dragon, so she'll still draw the card from the Dragon CHOW, and more importantly, she'll work towards her level up condition, which I believe she has to strike for 12, if memory serves correctly. It's been a while since I played Shivana, because she's kind of bad. And it technically is good with other dragons because it is a Fury trigger for those other dragons, like, I don't know, White Flame or this Eclipse Dragon. It's also really nice with Inviolus Vox. Play this. Play Inviolus Vox, you draw a card, and you get the dragon from Inviolus Vox, so that's kind of cute. Also, I guess with Aurelion Soul, it gives you I keep wanting to say furry. Fury trigger with Aurelion Soul to make it easier to level up Aurelion Soul. Sure, it's just +1/+1, but that might be, that 1 point might be exactly what you need. Still, though, not sure about this card. This card kind of lives and breathes on how good Dragons is, and if Dragon decks even want a card like this, so it's an okay card. Next card, for Constructed, unplayable. For Expedition, decent. Towering Stonehorn, 6 mana 7/7. Pretty decent stats for the cost, in all honesty. Fairly large for a 6-drop. The problem is it doesn't really do anything. Text says, I don't take damage from enemy spells or skills. Okay, but the card doesn't really do anything. It's a big beat stick without any kind of evasive word or some kind of word or keyword to push through damage like fearsome, elusive, overwhelm, whatever. It doesn't have any keyword that helps keep you alive like lifesteal or keep this alive like tough or pushing a lot of damage like scouts. It just can't get hit by thermogenic beam or something. It still can die to Vengeance too, so I really don't think this card is good. Maybe there's some big Demacia deck out there, but it's not even a dragon or anything, so it doesn't even have a good, like, tribe, if you will. And if you're looking for late game in Demacia, there's just so much better late game. You got 6 mana Cythria, you got Genevieve. I'm pretty sure she's in Demacia. If she's in Bilgewater, then I'm wrong, but I'm like 99% sure she's Demacia. You got Bright Steel formation. You got honestly, I'd rather play Captain Arica over this. There's a lot more stuff than this, so I think this is meant for Expedition, not constructed. Whatever. These kind of cards have to exist. Next card. No idea about this card. Lost Riches. 4-mana burst spell. Draw a treasure. If there aren't any to draw, create 2 treasures in your deck instead. Is this good for deep? The Sea Monster Treasure Hoarder, I believe that's the name of the card. The 7-mana 7/5 that tosses 2 and then puts in 2 treasures into your deck is somewhat playable. So you could use this to draw up or draw those 2 treasures that you shuffle in, or draw 1 treasure. And if I remember correctly, I can't remember because I haven't played Deep in forever because Deep's been bad for a long time. If you toss a treasure, it's not actually tossed. It goes and you draw the treasure instead, unless that's something unique to Treasure Hoarder, but I'm pretty sure it works that way. So that's kind of nice. The problem is, do you actually want to, before you get deep, fill your deck up with 2 more treasures if you don't have any treasure in your deck? I don't know. Do you want to play this in a deep deck just to give you more late game? More late game's not really that big of a problem with deep, I would say. So I like the card. It's kind of cool, but I think it's trying to help solve a problem that Deep doesn't have, and that is lack of a late game. Deep doesn't have that problem. Deep's problem is consistency early game and mid game. They kind of get run over by aggro oriented decks, and they don't really know exactly what they're doing. Are they a late game oriented deck? Aurelion Soul kind of beats them up then. And Invoke in general. Are they a mid range deck, a mid game deck? They're kind of bad compared to other mid game decks. They're in like a weird spot. And now the next card is a meme. I think this card is bad. There's some funny stuff you can do with it, like well, I should actually read the card first. Loaded Dice, 4-mana slow spell. Might as well have the text say do nothing, but let's read the text. For the rest of the round, when you damage the enemy nexus, nab 1. This card is terrible. It's annoying if your opponent plays it and uses it against you because they're like, okay, I've been nabbed. But in my opinion, this card is terrible. Now, sure, you can be like, well, you can pair it up with warning shots. I guess, yeah, but even then, it's like, okay, you're just now cycling the warning shots, and you can say like, well, you got the warning shots from Yordle Grifter. Some people are like, what about like Ezreal with this card, like a TF Ezreal deck or something? Sure, there are definitely deck building opportunities, but I just think the card itself is bad. There's also, I guess, a really cute combo in the late game. You play Loaded Dice, you play Powder Pandemonium. I think that's the name of the relatively new card that summons 1 Powder Monkey for every time you've plundered. So that's kind of cute, but meh. You have to remember, the reason why nab is bad is because, well, 1, most nab effects are overcosted at the moment, or understated for if they're a unit. And 2, the other big reason is sometimes it's very RNG oriented. Sometimes you'll just draw a card that does nothing for you or you don't care about. Like you'll draw a control deck's anti-aggro card. Like you're playing in Spooky Karma and you draw a Vile Feast. You're like, well, what am I going to do with this? This does nothing for me. Now, on the flip side, you can get the high variance. You can draw a deny from a Spooky Karma card, and you're like, all right, I'm going to win the game because I drew their denies. So that's the problem with nab and Loaded Dice, in my opinion. It's a fun card, not a good competitive card, though. And that's fine, in all honesty. I think it's fine to have fun cards for the more casual players, but in terms of constructed playability at the top level, not really going to make it, in my opinion. Who knows, though? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some kind of sick combo where you can, like, mill your opponent somehow with Loaded Dice, but I don't really think it's going to be a thing. I feel like this card can be broken, though, with, like, Ezreal and some kind of Cloud Drinker or whatever. But that's, like, already 3 regions, Ionia, PNZ, and Bilgewater, so who knows? I really do feel like this card can be broken, but on paper, I don't see a way to break it without it being an absolute garbage, like 20% win rate kind of deck. Now, the next card, I like it. Ancestral Boon. 2-mana burst spell. Grant the top ally in your deck +2/+2. Okay, you're trading off a card in your hand to buff a card on top, or the next ally on top of your deck. Okay, that's not great. In all honesty, you almost never want to trade cards for nothing. You're not affecting the board. You're not really doing anything to your opponent's hand or their board at all. You're not really drawing cards and increasing your card advantage. You're just buffing a unit that's coming up. Sure, you can hit champions, and buffing Brahm's cute, but the big issue is variance. Sometimes you won't buff the right unit. Now we need to look at the next line of text, Enlightened. Instead, grant all allies in your deck +2/+2. Is it worth waiting to 10 mana to play this when you're Enlightened? Maybe. Maybe in some weird Anivia ramp deck with Braum, like Braum, Anivia, throw in a little ramp? Maybe, but that's so slow. And at that point, I feel like you're just better playing off, if you're trying to do that, you're better off playing Feel the Rush or Anivia Control. No Braum. And that ability, the Enlightened effect, is really slow. Like, that's the biggest issue, I think. Sure, it's like, it's slow as in, like, yeah, the spell, it's fast, or burst. It's like, you don't have to worry about it. But to actually get the value from that, even from the Enlightened effect, you have to draw cards. You have to get the cards, because it's only affecting the cards in your deck. All the cards you've played that are on board and in your or even just drawn in your hand they're out of luck, really. So I don't know about this card. Powerful, but slow, and kind of needs to be enlightened, because if you're not enlightened, it kind of sucks. But I like it. Next card up, though. This one I think is decent. Not good, but decent. It's a weird card. Not even that weird. It's kind of hard to evaluate. Spoils of War. 3 mana, as my voice cracks. 3 mana burst spell. Burst speed. Grant an ally +1/+2. Okay. It's a permanent buff for 3 mana. 3 mana +1/+2 is not great, but it's permanent, so that's fine. If I remember correctly, Pocket Aces is a 3 mana burst spell that gives +2/+1. It's not really playable. When you draw it, I think it costs 1 less, so it costs 2 mana. That card's not too playable, but you will see that card every now and again in like Fizz and TF decks as a 1 or 2 of. What makes this card somewhat decent is the Plunder. Plunder, grant +2/+4 instead, basically double the buff. Now we're talking. That amount of health, +2 health, is already decent health. +4 health is already pretty good. Look at Sunblessed Vigor. Sunblessed Vigor is a 2 mana +0/+2. It's also permanent. For an extra 1 mana, you're getting the +1. You're also getting the opportunity to plunder. I think this card is really nice. Sure, Sunblessed Vigor is cheap, but you can also cast this with only spell mana, so you can play a unit on curve, whether it's something like I don't know, a Aphelios, a TF, and still play this card. So that's good. Also Braum with this card likes this card. Braum always just likes getting some kind of attack somehow, so he can actually kill things, so that's good. Back, Braum used to actually have 1 attack. They had to remove it because it was too OP for him to actually be able to deal damage. So I think this card is good. I don't know what kind of deck would want to play this, but I think this card is insane. Not insane, but it's really good. Not like 3 of in the deck good, because you do want to plunder with this. But I think at least a 1 of, maybe a 2 of in most non-control Freljord decks. Nice card. Next one I also really like, Star-Tipped Peak. 2 mana landmark. I don't think this card's good, I just like it. Countdown 2. Create 2 random celestial cards that cost 3 or less in hand. It's bad star chart. Super cool star chart. It's slow, it takes time to get those 2 cards, but it's sort of like a draw 2, but not really. And you cannot choose the cards unlike you can with Super Cool Star Chart. Now, why do I think this is good? It's a landmark. Talia, star-tipped peak. Talia wants cheap landmarks. Star-tipped peak, cheap landmark. Shurima Targan. Seems like a decent combination. And if Targan or even Shurima itself just gets more landmark matters cards that want especially cheap landmarks, this is a good card. This also helps out a Talia deck because in my opinion, I think Talia decks will eventually run out of cards in hand around turn 6, turn 7-ish. Yes, you can put in some draw like Preservarium and stuff, but of course you want more stuff too. You want to hit a critical mass of landmarks, I think, so you can play Talia on curve. So not just playing Preservarium, because your Preservarium might actually count down before Talia can come out. Star to Peak helps out with that, and it's not a bad one. And most of the Celestials that cost 3 or less are pretty good. There isn't really a bad one per se. Like, they're all good. The spells are all decent. Crescent Strike, Equinox, Moonsilver, whatever. The units are good to help fight for the board because they're pretty overstated for their cost, except for maybe, I guess, like Messenger, really. And yeah, it's all pretty good. So I like the card. Don't think it's really, really strong and it's going to be a meta definer, but I'm a big fan of it. Now, the next one is a meme. Might be busted somehow, but I can't see it. Destiny's Call. 8 mana, already expensive, so it better do something big. Burst speed, okay, a little bit better, a little bit better. We're getting there. Grant an ally in hand, +8/+8. What? That's not good. Sure, I get it. You can put it on something that has like elusive or overwhelm. Like I've seen people say, like, I'll put it on Teemo. Or like put it on Bubble Bear or something like that. I'm like, yeah, but well, first off, the first thing to say with this card is Hush still exists. I know, it's the classic Magic thing, like dies to Doomblade kind of thing, but that is a thing that you have to take into account. Plus, it's 8 mana. That's a lot of mana. If you spend 8 mana to cast this card, sure, it's a spell. You can use spell mana, but even if you're using spell mana, it's still a lot of mana. If you cast this card, your opponent's going to see that and they're going to be like, wow, you just spent a lot of mana. That's great for me. You probably don't have anything big to do except maybe play a small unit that you buffed. So they're going to take their turn developing the board, developing their game plan, whatever it is, while preparing as well for a big unit, whether that is through holding a Hush, having a Vengeance, killing you, whatever. Buying a turn with something like Concussive Palm. It's a very telegraphed plan is what I'm trying to say. So I'm not a big fan of it, but there are some units that like this ability. The other problem is it's not unlike say Battle Fury, Trindamir's champ spell. It has to go onto a unit in hand. Sure, if this could go on a unit on board, this card would be busted. So it's a good thing it can't, but because it has to go on a unit in hand, you have to still pay the mana cost, so you might not even be able to play the same card that you buffed that turn, but maybe there's some weird hand buff thing going on. There's that card, Navori Highwayman, the 2 mana 1/2. I might have the name wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the correct name. That's a 2 mana 1/2 that summons a other guy. He has a different name, but it's basically a copy of himself with the same stats. So Navori Highwayman with this card becomes what, a 2 mana 9/10 that summons another 2 mana 9/10. So that's kind of cute. I feel like that's probably one of the best things to do with this card, just off the top of my head. Still, though, that's kind of a meme, but maybe that's what they're trying to make you do here. Now, the next card. This card, I like this card. I don't know if it's good enough. Sea Scarab, 2 mana 1/2, deep, so it's a sea monster. When another ally dies, or Last Breath triggers, of course, I guess, toss 1. Okay, and since it's deep, it's a 4/5 in the late game, so that's also pretty cool. Got some nice synergy with Maokai thanks to his saplings. Is this card good? The problem I'm seeing with this card is Deep already has a lot of early game they're playing. in theory, because like deep's not really in the meta right now, so there's not really a concrete deep list. There's a lot of different variants of deep for the like 10 people who still play deep. But looking at the deep's early game right now, you've got Dreg's Dredgers, the 1-mana 1/1 that tosses 3. You've got Thorny Toad, the 2-mana 1/4 that when it dies heals you by 2 and I think tosses 2. I might have my numbers wrong here. I apologize. Again, like I've said before, I don't play deep. I haven't played deep in forever. And then you have Deadbloom Wanderer, the 3-mana 3/2 with Lifesteal that tosses 3, I believe. That's a lot of early game for a deck that doesn't want to really do much in the early game besides just survive. Now, sure, yes, you can argue, well, streamer, this does become a 4 or 5 in the late game. Sure, don't get me wrong. It also dies easily to things like Mystic Shot, and of course, like, lull dies to removal. And of course, they could also Mystic Shot Deadbloom Wanderer. I don't know. It does help you get to deep fast. Also, another card, Slaughter Docks, I think that's the name of the card, the Deep Landmark, is another thing you want to play in the early game. So now we're just like, we've got all these cards that Deep want to play like turn 3 and before, and they're all fighting for this same spot. I feel like Deep needs, in my opinion, some kind of mid game that's not understated sea monsters. I feel like a Deep player doesn't really want to play something like Abyssal Eye as a 5-mana 3/3 elusive, or I don't know, Devour as a 6-mana 4/4 that might obliterate something's fine, but they really don't like to do that. So I'm not sure if this is gonna be what saves Deep, but the Deep players probably like it, and who knows? Maybe we'll get Pike this spoiler season. Maybe Pike will help out Deep. Maybe Deep won't have to play Maokai. Maybe I don't know. Deep without, I was about to say without Nautilus too, but Deep without Nautilus sounds bad. Anyway though, next card, Soul Spinner. It's a spider. 3-mana 3/2. When I'm summoned, grant me +1/+1 and Fearsome if an ally died this round. Okay, interesting. Is this card good? I don't know. This is definitely a more aggressive card, and I'm not really an aggro player. Some people I've seen said like, Nasus Fearsome likes this card. Okay, sure, I can see it. The problem is an ally has to die, which isn't tough. If you're playing this card, you're playing 1s and you're playing 2s, you're attacking in, so your opponent's probably going to block or play a Mystic Shot or something, whatever. The other issue I have, though, is you want to play this card before an attack. Now, obviously, you can attack in first and then play this card to play around things like Avalanche, of course, but whatever. I don't know. Does Spider Burn, like Spider Aggro, whatever you want to call it, want this card? It's a spider, so it helps level up Elise, so that's nice. But I don't know. Like, looking at the card stat-wise, 3-mana 3/2 is not even that good. That's the stats of a 2-drop. So this card pretty much is saying, you need to get my trigger off. You need to make me a 4/3 with Fearsome, which honestly, a 4/3 for 3 isn't even overstated for their 3-drop. As evidenced by cards like Badger Bear and which is a 3/4 granted, and Iron Ballista. Still though, maybe Spiders wants this, but I'm not too impressed by this card. Speaking of not being impressed, next card, Shadow Apprentice, 1-mana 1/1 elusive. I don't know what card wants this card. 1-mana 1/1 elusive. When I'm summoned, grant me +1/+1 if an ally has Ephemeral. Who wants this? I know, like, I've played since the beta. I know the metas. I know the old metas. I remember these Zed elusive days. Does Zed elusives want this? I don't think this would help Zed elusives because, well, 1, Zed elusives doesn't exist right now, and 2, it's not reliable. Like, how are you going to activate this guy? You might say, oh, won't Zed or Hecarim activate this? No, because they only get their ephemerals when they attack, and their ephemerals almost always die anyway. Unless your opponent blocks the ephemeral and then removes the blocker, so the ephemeral doesn't die. That's the only way you're going to have it. And I guess, yes, you could technically, there are ephemerals you could play. There are ways to give things ephemeral, but what's the payoff? +1/+1 to this guy. That's not a big enough payoff for me to want to play ephemerals, in all honesty. Sure, 1 mana 2/2 elusive is scary, but there's a lot of ways to deal with elusives nowadays. Between, like, back when Zed elusives was good, there weren't that many ways to deal with elusives. Now we have even more challengers. We've got cards that give vulnerable. We've got Sharp Sight. We've got Hush. We've got Invoke to invoke our own elusives to block with. So I don't really see this card being good, but maybe. I'm not. Again, like I said, I'm not an aggro player. Maybe a more aggro-oriented player sees the potential in this card, because I don't. Now the next card. Speaking of me not being an aggro player, I am a control player. I'm a dirtle boy, and I love my control. I love dirtling around and sitting around doing nothing. So I love this next card, Field Musicians. 4 mana, 1/4 attune. Okay, awful stats for the cost. That is the stats of a 2-drop, so it better do something good, right? Kinda does. Each round, once you've summoned 3 other allies, refill your spell mana and draw 1. That is a really big thing it's doing. The problem is, it's a 4 mana 1/4. Sure, it has attune, so you're getting a little bit of mana back if you have empty spell mana orbs or whatever you want to call them. The thing is, how are you going to summon 3 other allies a turn? Eye of the Dragon to summon Dragonlings helps, but even then, I don't know. Now, even though I think this card is bad in my opinion, I'm going to play it. I think it is fun. It says draw 1, and if a card says draw a card somehow, I will try it out. And I always like to hold back and say there's some potential when cards can draw cards. Now, granted, you got to do a lot of work to draw cards here, and I believe you can only do it once a round, so that's kind of meh. And the stat line's a little low. So, in my honest opinion, I don't think this card is competitive viable, but a fun meme, and who knows, maybe there's some weird deck out there that likes this card. I don't see it, though. Now, the next card. This next card, actually, my pick for the most powerful card out of all of these cards. Not powerful as in lots of stats, but just does a lot and really helps out certain decks. Crimson Bloodletter, 1 mana, 1/2. Yeah, really powerful card, right, streamer? Wait a second, Mr. Strawman. Let's finish reading the card. The next time you summon another ally, deal 1 to it and grant me +1/+1. That's huge. Everyone should be looking at this card and being like, what is this card? Yes, I get it. Hush exists, but if you're playing against Targon and you attack in with the Bloodletter, you should expect Hush. So you should be like, okay, if they have Hush, I'm fine having my Bloodletter die. If you attack into Targon with 3 mana up, of course. Or if you put this into combat in general, like you block with it. The reason this card is great is because it does a lot of things. Sure, it only works for like about 3-ish decks, but those 3 decks really needed help. Those decks are Vladimir decks, Scargrounds decks, which also are kind of Vladimir decks, but also kind of not, and not really as important for the 3rd deck as it is with the other 2 decks, but Swain decks. Swain doesn't mind this guy either. Helps level up Swain, so that's cute, but compared to Vladimir and Scargrounds, not as great in Swain deck, but still decent. Still, though, for Vladimir decks, this does what? It helps level up Vlad himself. It activates your Crimsons when you play them, the ones that care about taking damage. It triggers the Scargrounds for when you play a unit. That's huge. Now, is this card enough to help out those archetypes? I don't know. But if you play this on turn 1, if you get this on turn 1 in a Scargrounds or Vladimir deck, you're doing great. Because this card itself will be a problematic card. Thanks to the stat increase. Like, you just get 1 trigger. Let's say you just get 1 trigger off on this. Deal 1 to whatever you summon next turn. And this thing's now 1 mana 2/3. That's already great. And it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing and you're going to do really well. I'm definitely going to try this card out. I honestly think this card might be the card that brings Vladimir, not to tier 1. I don't think this card is going to be enough to bring Vlad to tier 1. I think it will help out Vlad and maybe bring Vlad into tier 3 category, maybe even tier 2. That's how good I think this card is. Now, the downside with a card like this is if you don't draw it, your deck kind of sucks. Think about like how Yasuo decks are. If Yasuo decks don't have Yasuo, they kind of suck. If you don't have this card on turn 1 or even a little bit later on like turn 2 or turn 3, your deck kind of seems to fall apart. Not as hard as a Yasuo deck. Like if you're a Yasuo deck without Yasuos, you seem to just have a bunch of bad stuns. Maybe you're playing a Phelios and you can have him as the backup win con, but you kind of need Yasuo. These Crimson Bloodletter decks, the Vlad decks, Scarground decks, whatever, they don't really need the Bloodletter. They want the Bloodletter on turn 1, turn 2, early game, whatever. So they can get that value chain rolling and rolling, but it's fine if they don't have it, obviously. So, crazy good card. Now, the next card. I also like this card. I'm not an aggro player, though, so I'm probably overrating this card. Shrieking Spinner. 4 mana, 2/5 Spider. Okay. Not terrible stats for the cost, but not great. Attack. Grant Spider allies +1/+0. This is a permanent buff, unless Riot made a mistake and meant to say grant Spider allies +1/+0 until the end of the round or something. It also buffs itself, unless they also made a mistake and they didn't put in the word other and said like grant other spider allies, because this thing itself is a spider. So I'd assume it would buff itself. I've seen some people say it's not that good. It doesn't have fearsome. You're right. Don't get me wrong, but giving a nice +1/+0 buff to a board of, let's say you don't even have that many. Let's say you only have like 2 other spiders on the board, like an Elise and a Spiderling. That's still really good. And here's the other thing, in my opinion. Compared to other things that want to attack, like Lulu, this thing has a lot of health. A 5 health unit on turn 4, attacking on turn 4, is most likely not going to die in combat. Sure, it'll take some damage, but it will attack in as a 3/5, unless your opponent does any weird stuff like Hushes or Troll Chance or whatever, in which case you're still probably happy. A 3/5 attack when it attacks is probably not dying, unless your opponent is Noxus and they play Culling Strike, of course, or they have banked some mana and they play like Thermogenic Beam or whatever, but there's not that much removal that deals with this card on curve, and that's why I think this card is good for a more aggressive, even more mid-range aggro, spider deck. Big fan. Now, the next card, this one's a meme. I'm not even going to try and give this card some, I'll try, but I can't really give this card too much hope here. Strength in numbers. 8 mana slow spell. Disgusting slow spell, and it's expensive. Summon 2 Legion Marauders. If you don't remember what a Legion Marauder is, it is the 3 mana 3/2 in Noxus that says, when I attack, give all Legion Marauders everywhere +1/+1. Okay. Sure. It's not amazing. Like, what are you gonna do? Play Katarina, Legion Marauder, and attack in with this? It sounds bad. Maybe you play like Iterative Improvement and Counterfeit Copies. That sounds like such a bad idea, but... And then maybe, I've seen some people even say like, oh, Legion Marauder Harrowing. I'm like, that just sounds like worst Darius Harrowing to me. Like, here's the problem with Legion Marauders. They're slow. Number 2, they don't really have keywords that do anything. They just grow and grow and grow, and they grow really slowly. And because they don't have things like Fearsome or Overwhelm, they just get chump blocked forever. So, mostly a meme card, but a fun meme, right? Now, the next card. I think this card is also bad. Production Surge. 0 mana slow spell. To play, spend all your mana, similar to Thermogenic Beam. Summon random turrets whose total cost equals the mana spent. Now, I assume if you've reached the total mana spent, it stops and doesn't just fill your board up with the 0 mana turrets. If it doesn't, maybe this card's a little bit better, but I don't think it will. So, Heimerdinger buff, I guess? I can't remember Heimerdinger's text, but I believe Heimerdinger just needs to see the turrets get summoned. He doesn't care if the turrets are his turrets or not. He just cares if they're being summoned. I don't know. This card just a little too RNG oriented for me. And plus, like, I've seen some people say, like, oh, just wait until you have a lot of mana and play it and hope for T-Hex or Elusive Turret or Overwhelmed Turret. I'm like, ugh. I don't want my game plan to be hope something happens, in my honest opinion. Sure, there are other good turrets too, like the Fearsome Turret and whatever, but meh. Not a fan of the card. Anyway, though, next card. Concurrent Timelines. I'm also pretty sure that's Echo's Gauntlet too, so Echo kind of incoming, maybe, possibly. But let's look at the card itself. 1 mana slow spell. Okay. Cheap card. I like cheap cards. For the rest of the game, okay, it's a permanent thing. I like permanent things. The first time you play a follower each round, pick one of 3 followers with the same cost to transform it into. Hello, RNG. How do you do? I think this card is bad. It's a fun meme, in my opinion, but I don't think this card is competitive viable. I feel like it's going to get a lot of cheesy wins, but I don't think it's good. It has been confirmed by Riot, though, that when you summon a unit, and if that unit has a summon or play ability, you still get that ability. So the combo everyone's talking about is you play this card, and then you play Commander Ladros. And then you hope to RNG your way into a Dreadway to kill your opponent in 1 turn. Which will work, but do you really want to do that? I mean, yeah, you do, but do you really think that deck is competitive? I don't know. And what's the rest of the deck look like? Like, what happens if that plan fails? Because it's not a guarantee. There's enough 9-drops that you might not just see the Dreadway. I don't know what the math is, because I think there's around maybe 6 or 7 9-drops in the game at the moment, and there's going to be more, obviously, as the game goes on and grows in size. But I just don't think that's competitive. Fun and annoying when it happens, if it happens to you, obviously, and you don't have a way to interact with it, whether that is denying the Ladros summon or just killing the Dreadway, but it's kind of just not good enough. Anyway, though, I've been talking a lot. This video has been going on for a long time. I've had a lot to talk about this for this video because there's a lot of different cards that are kind of funny and finicky and janky, and I love my jank. So let's end it here, right? If you guys enjoy the video, I'd love it if you could leave a like or a comment down below, of course. If you got any ideas for some cards that I've said are bad or I just didn't talk about, any ideas that you would like to tell me about, I'd love to hear it down below in the comments section as well. Also, if you want to keep up with the Legends of Runeterra content, you can always subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me. And if you guys want to watch me play some Legends of Runeterra, you can always go and check me out on Twitch TV at my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Zeneton. I play Legends of Runeterra there pretty much almost every day. Anyway, though, this is a very long video. I apologize for that, but I hope you all enjoyed it. And until I see you guys in the next one, bye!